not falling in the hole was the name of the game back then. Is it the same here in this movie? Well, we'll see. Starting here with the IMDb plot. After a young man gets separated from his friends while in the woods, he falls into a 10-foot deep pit of spikes, impaling him through the leg and leaving him trapped. He quickly learns that this fall was not an accident. It never is, but it was an accident. Maybe, sort of. We'll find out more eventually. All right, so this one was, a little pop-up surprise here. Didn't see this one coming. Wasn't, when I saw the title, of course, and I think for some, brought you guys back to the video game. There's a video game called Pitfall for some that may not know. And, it was just basically very simple. I think it was maybe on Atari, I think. A game where you were just this guy and you just had to get from one stage of the forest to the other, and basically had to make obstacles like grabbing a rope and swinging it over like a lake. Lake might have had alligators in it, or other kind of traps. And I don't remember what the ultimate point was. You just trying to get him through from one side to the other without dying in the dangers of the forest or wherever the hell he was. So when they came out with this with this movie, I was kind of like, okay, but what are we doing here? How are they going to set this up? So I was kind of curious. I think I did see, I didn't do much for promote on this one. But so I think I did watch a little bit of the trailer because of my curiosity, and I was thinking, how do you change the game into this? And I think even after it was the trailer, maybe the tagline they used in it, it wasn't just about, somebody in the forest, avoiding falling in holes. Because, as fun as that sounds, that probably wasn't going to make the best movie. So instead, we throw a slasher in here and the usual group of young people into the forest, and, kind of use a combination there with, the occasional hole that you can fall in, hence Pitfall. So, I guess, they kind of take some liberties with the name, and there's nothing wrong, but I guess it's not, I guess for some of us old school people here, we recognize the name in the game. But for others, it's just another title here for a slasher movie, and at the end of the day, it's just a slasher movie. Not really tied into this game. So anyway, enough with the game and that. Let's talk about the movie itself. It starts off. We're going to get a little bit of a backstory of the killer here, and I'll kind of mention that in a moment. But we do get a little bit of backstory here of the killer, as we see some other people here, two parents and a child who are having a struggle here out in this forest. And that kind of sets up, who the killer is going to be and a little bit of backstory before we move into this group of eventual these people that are going to end up here in this forest. Is, we got the usual makeup, friends, couples, and so forth. They have a little bit of a backstory amongst themselves, a little bit of a tragedy. There is a brother and sister, and that's kind of the main characters here. And, they've also suffered a tragic event and, a little bit of drama in their lives, because of that. And I would say that their backstory and the killer's backstory is something that's going to be, kind of brought up as this movie kind of goes on via, some flashbacks and so forth. So keep that in mind. That's going to be something that's going to kind of roll on as the movie goes. You'll learn a little bit more about the killer, and you'll learn a little bit more about this tragic event and why the brother and sister, are having some issues as well. So amongst that, there's some couples, and there's the drama of boyfriend girlfriend kind of drama as well, and who's sleeping with who. A little bit of that, not over the top, but there's a little bit of that as well within this group, and they're out here, they're in the forest doing their thing, and then one night the brother along with another guy are out, and I don't remember exactly why they were foraging around in the middle of the night. But they hear something, get startled, and decide to make a run for it. And obviously, as it said in the plot, the brother falls in the hole and kind of gets stuck. But they were separated. So the other guy has to go back to camp without the brother and be like, hey, we got separated and I can't find him and so forth. So obviously they're not going to leave him, out here in this forest and so forth. So they're going to go look for him. And in the process, the slasher here is going to haunt them and start picking them off. That's the kind of basics here. Speaking of basics, I think, I'm going to say, obviously, I had, little expectations for this movie. Probably saw it just because of the title and remembered the game, and it was like, okay. And, obviously having a slasher, that helps. So I'm always interested in that case. But it wasn't high on my list, but since it, fell into the laps here, so we saw it. And I would say that it was a little bit more complex than I thought. Like I said, some horror movies just going to throw a bunch of people in the forest and just kill them, and I'm fine with that. I'm good. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I'm about blood and guts. You splatter them all over the place, we're good. But here, like I said, we're going to learn a lot about the killer, and I think even to a point, they want you to maybe even feel sorry for the killer here, and that's fine and good. If you want to or not, but I think they give you a little bit of that. After they kill a bunch of people, I don't know if you really want to feel sorry for them or not. But, they kind of show you, why this person ended up this way. And if you want to feel sorry for the situation they came from, I guess, you can have that. So sometimes we have a killer, we learn basically nothing about them. They're just nuts and whatever. Or we just, hear what, a little bit about them, or some, person tells you a little bit of history about, this forest being haunted by whatever, but it's just a killer and whatever. But here, they do go out of their way to at least give you something here to chew on as far as the killer. And then, like I said, with the brother and sister, at first, you see a little bit of tension. You're not really sure, what is going on there. At first, I thought it was maybe because of who one of them was dating or not. I thought maybe that was an issue. And while it might have been, it wasn't the main issue. As it kind of rolls on, you're going to see an event, and I'm not going to give that away, especially since it's a newer movie. I should have said keep this kind of spoiler free with that kind of stuff. There is something that goes on between the two, and an event that happened, and as the movie kind of rolls on, you'll find out more about that, and it definitely comes to light later on in kind of the final act and so forth. And it kind of amps a little drama there in the final moments of the movie as well. But I won't get into any details. Let you guys kind of see that and see, the deal with the killer as well. Outside of that, and because I guess they kind of inserted that stuff, the movie is almost 150 minutes long. I did thought, hey, it could have went just a little bit faster than it did. But again, because I think they did these kind of flashback moments and so forth, and, we had a couple of moments where you just see the brother here in this pit stuck there, which is kind of important. He's there, and that's who they're searching for, and, you kind of see him, doing the little he can to survive while he's in this pit. And then he does have some flashbacks to kind of clue you in. So it is important, but, I thought, maybe it needed to move a touch faster in certain parts. especially, maybe at the beginning when we kind of first get introduced to the people. But I kind of always almost feel that way because I really don't care, especially in a slasher, because they're gonna die anyway. So whatever. Um, I thought, as far as, speaking of the slashing part and whatever, we've had some decent kills here. The killer did seem to be brutal, did seem to be pretty good at killing, and so forth. So I think, some of the kills were good. You felt the force of it. You felt, the pain that some of the characters were going through. Not all of them were like instant deaths. Some of them had to feel some pain before they died. So I think they did a pretty good job of giving the audience, if you like the blood and guts and the torture of it and so forth, that aspect of it. And that kind of made sense, being, a crazy killer out here in the woods. And the fact that they're, kind of laying traps and so forth. That, not killing someone, so quickly kind of made sense, to kind of, I just put it, let's say he has bow and arrows, and that's one of the things was, and I think, every time he did hit a target, you kind of felt that, which was good, because sometimes, either they don't show it or it's just super quick and, whatever, but I think you felt it here for the most part. So I thought that was okay. I didn't think the blood wasn't like over the top. I think it was more about the pain level as far as instead of the blood. I don't want to give away all. I guess there was an interesting one in the tent later on. I guess you could feel that and see a lot of that. As far as the killer himself, not one of these movies where we have a cool mask or anything like that. He's kind of hooded. They don't really show you the killer that much. They're kind of hidden in the woods for the most part. Obviously, towards the end, you get a better look and so forth. But for the most part, it is just a figure that's kind of got a hooded jacket on, and is just kind of running around there. I guess one thing that kind of bothered me and so forth, while this was going on was how did this person exactly make these holes? And I'm sure, there might be a technique to it, and I'm not saying that they couldn't have done it. And like I said, there might be a technique to it and so forth. But I was just thinking, how? Like, how do you dig this hole, get out of this hole, trap it with spikes and so forth and whatever, don't get hurt in the process, or even if they got hurt, whatever, but like, how do you set that up? And then how, and I guess they say that, I guess if you live in the forest, you become attuned to where everything is. We've seen that kind of thing before in other movies, but how do you know where you leave all your traps? How do you know that you're not going to fall in a hole? What happens if you fall in a hole? So as I was kind of watching this, I was thinking, okay, this person lives out there. I guess, maybe they have a zone where they call, maybe that's their hunting ground, and then maybe they, try to stay outside of that. But even they have to come into it, as they kind of lure the people in to it, like he does with the brother here falling into the hole. The people are kind of lured to him, and in turn find themselves, in the middle of his big trap here. But, how did these holes come about? And I guess, being a horror movie or whatever, you're not really supposed to take that kind of deep thought into it. But I did. I wondered. It bothered me at times, especially some of the scenes where you're just watching the brother in there and, they're kind of showing the hole and whatever. And you're like, how'd this guy do this? How'd this hole come from? How do you kind of dig this and get out and whatever? I guess, maybe you tie a rope to a tree that's nearby and pull yourself out. That's a lot of work. How many holes does he have out there? I think there was, there's the one the brother falls in. I think there's another one that they almost fall in earlier. There's probably, at least several out there. So, that's a lot of time and effort and so forth. How are you doing this? Why are you, going to such great lengths besides the fact that you're now nuts? Um, but yeah, okay, whatever. It is something that I was thinking about as this guy is sitting in this hole. But anyways, um, overall, I'm gonna say that I was actually pleasantly surprised. I thought that this was just going to be another bad slasher and whatever, and who really cared. But I actually liked it. I didn't have any major problems. And I gotta say the acting was great, but not so bad that I was like, I have to turn this off, or I wish them all death immediately. Like some of the other stuff that may be on like Netflix or Amazon and so forth. But maybe that aspect wasn't fabulous. But I still think it was watchable enough. But besides that, I like that they put in some effort. Like that, I don't usually go for that kind of thing, nor do I care. But I kind of appreciated that they at least tried and gave a little bit of effort in giving the killer a little bit of a story and putting a little thought into this to the whole brother sister drama that was going on. So it wasn't just a hey, let's just stick this name and kill a bunch of people and hope that people watch it because of the name thing. I thought they seemed to at least put some effort behind it, and so forth. So I wish maybe that there was another person or two killed, add to the count a little bit, but it was okay. At the end of the day, I was much more surprised and happy with it than I thought it was going to be. So with that, I think I'm going to give it 3.5 pools of blood. I enjoyed it enough and didn't have too many complaints about it. So that'll be 3.5 pools of blood out of 5. So horrorsquadreviews.blogspot.com, so you can find all my reviews, written in videos, certainly tons of video reviews for a while now, so you can like and subscribe and do everything else that everybody wants to do here on YouTube. If not, no worries, is okay. I thank you for your time regardless. Blue Sky, Facebook information down below. Reach out to me there. Talk to me, about this movie, horror, and so forth. Down in the comment section as well if you do watch it. Your thoughts, or even your thoughts on the game. Do you remember the game? Do you know that there's a game? And so forth. I'd be interested in knowing if you're as old as I am and remember that game. So with that, I will catch you on the next review, horror fans.